And now, Kyle and Steven present another episode of the Go F Yourself podcast. It's Fix. Really? Well, that's embarrassing. The Go Fix Yourself podcast.
Welcome to the Go Fix Yourself podcast, where we are fixing what we don't know through guests who know a lot more than us. I am your co-host, Stephen Cornfield, and sitting next to me, left in the flesh, is the one, the only, Kyle Redding.
What is going on, everybody? I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be around people that aren't children for the day.
Yeah, because you're mom in it. You're on the single dad life. Mr. Mom.
Single parent life is way harder than people give it credit for. Like, everybody kind of says it in passing, but it's the hardest job there is. I stand by that. Harder than being the president.
Shout out to all the single moms out there.
And single dads.
Jeez. Oh, I mean, sorry. Yeah. No, I'm not.
That part. Jesus,
I'm not trying to discriminate anybody. But so today, if you're new to the podcast, we like to have people on that just don't know or just know a lot more about what they're doing than us. It could be touring the world. It could be running a kitchen. It could be anything. And so we like to say we're fixing our knowledge on certain topics. Now, today, we are fixing our knowledge on stand-up comedy.
I always thought I was an expert on this. Like, I've done a lot of stand-up.
I know, and I want to talk about that too. Yeah, we're fucking just veterans in the comedy scene. No, there was a time, I don't know if you remember this, there was a time years and years ago that we were like, yo, we should start writing jokes. Mm-hmm. And then we should do like a open mic night, or we should put on an event where it's like, come see us either bomb or be successful. Now, of course, I don't know about you, but for me, I'm always like, yes, absolutely. And you can see the crowd, they're laughing with you, you write your jokes. And then I write one funny joke and then that's it. And then I'm like, damn.
Guys, I'm going to do a 12-second set.
Yeah.
If that's okay with you.
Hey.
I think that should kill maybe.
Hickory dickory dock.
Yeah.
It's like, you just start like riffing on everybody else's shit. And so I think for me, I definitely let that dream die really quickly.
I'm still holding on.
Yeah?
I'm still holding on.
Because I think it's terrifying. Like, for me, getting up on stage as a musician playing, you have instruments in front of you. So there's always like a little barrier between you and the audience. When you're a comedian, you don't have that barrier. It is literally you and them. And they're like, fucking make me laugh. Like, when you're playing in a band, it's like, whether, whatever, like, they were good. They weren't like, but you don't have to
It's not about you as a person. It's about the music.
Yeah. And so basically, it all comes down to one person on stage, and it's like, everybody's like, basically like, make me laugh.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying to me.
It's terrifying to me. And I think that's why we need to bring in people that are better than us.
Yes. That was such a good segue, dude.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. Well, and that's why we have a local comedian, national comedian, playing arenas, playing stadiums.
Kevin Hard. That's his code name.
What did you say? It was Kevin Hard.
Yeah.
No, Justin Sands. Thank you for coming on, man.
Thank you for
Appreciate
coming
you
on.
for having me, guys.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, well, we're excited. We're excited to kind of dive in because, like I said, I think we've been interested in like the whole idea of writing comedy jokes and then actually performing it. But then, even before we hit record on these cameras and this audio, you were like, cadence and blah blah blah. I was like, whoa. I was like, that's some of the stuff I want to talk about.
What the hell is cadence?
Yeah, what is that? What is that?
I have to look that up.
Is that even a word? Yeah. I don't know. I never used it. But anyway, we're very excited to have you on. Thank you for coming on. And so let's start it off. Let's start the conversation off by introducing you to my parents.
Hello.
And
I love them.
For the people that are, have, do you love that?
I do love them.
Dude,
I mean,
you probably just fucking made their goddamn day. Not actually. I just ruined their day by saying "goddamn."
Well, that's true. I was also.
It was like they were really high and then they went really low, real
Kyle's
quick.
so sweet. Goddamn. Oh my god, my son.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
They gained a new son and lost one.
Yeah.
At the same moment.
You're
It's
like, well,
okay.
Stephen was kind of we were getting tired of him.
He's the
They were
prodigal
looking for an
son.
excuse.
He's-
Kyle, how you doing, bud? Hey, can we come up for Christmas? And it's
Yeah.
like, oh man. Anyway, so they live in New York. They don't know who we know. So we like to kind of say like, hey, we do have people that we know. We have friends. And so introduce yourself to them, but also everybody else listening.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, my name's Justin Sands. I'm a chef by day, and I like to do comedy in my free time.
With a fucking cape? That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Comedy's been taking over a lot more time. It's been working its way up from like 1 or 2 nights a week to 2 to 3, 3 to 4 sometimes. Damn. It's been a lot of fun. You know, I've just always wanted to get into it. Started getting into it. It's funny actually. I did want to touch base on what you were saying there too, talking about writing jokes and trying to just prepare yourself for a situation like that. I spent years writing jokes, about 2 or 3 years writing jokes before I ever got on stage.
Really?
Had hundreds
I tried for
of them put
6
together.
months.
It turns out that I realized after about 2 or 3 open mics, you know, getting up there and trying to tell all these jokes that I had written, you know, I wrote all these jokes out for so long, and, you know, kind of like how you were saying, like I wrote them out. I thought that would be funny. I'd imagine the way that I was just crushing the stage with them. And I was like, oh man, I got like an hour before I even step on stage. Like, this is going to be amazing. And turns out that I write different than how I talk. It was something that I learned really quickly, where my writing voice was super corny. Oh boy, was it bad. And it was something that I had to eventually turn into learning how to write like I talk, or just more just so learning how to riff it kind of and take an idea up on stage and let my voice kind of pull it out of me.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Which has been a lot of fun.
I dig that.
We're talking about introduction though. Sorry.
That's okay. I love that
parents.
I got really excited about it because I know it's coming. We're gonna talk more about that stuff. But yeah, just you know, so you're a chef by day, a comedian by night, working about 2 to 3, and so, but you're not just a chef, and I that's something I want to make sure too. You're a fucking sous chef, which is like, for people who aren't familiar with the restaurant industry, it's like you have your line cooks, which are like kind of the dudes who, you know, are kind of in the trenches. They're working hard, but then you have the sous chef, and then you have the head chef. If you've seen The Bear, I can't remember what her name is.
I just started watching that
Really?
last week. I watched the first 3 episodes.
Oh, dude.
I've heard a lot about it.
Do you get
It's
fucking
way too
triggered?
triggering.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Like
It triggers me, and I was front of the house, so I was like, "Oh God, yeah." I was like, I can only imagine for actual back of the house guys. But you're a sous chef, so what does that entail? Just like really quickly, give us a kind of a quick overview of what being a sous chef looks like.
Yeah, you know, for terms that's a little bit easier for people to understand. Essentially, I'm a kitchen manager. You know, I help run the daily operations of our line. We come up with our specials. Me and the other sous chef and the executive chef collaborate to come up with monthly specials and different menu items. We help run the hiring and the firing, the schedule writing, the daily things, making sure everything's flowing smoothly between the different departments, front of house, back of house, and our prep kitchen as well. And just making sure things cycle all through that. This job that I'm working at right now is actually my first kitchen manager position, which has been a lot of fun. It's been the greatest learning experience I've ever had in my life. And it's
Shout them out. Shout them out.
I work at the Beartooth Grill.
Hell yeah.
Yep. I absolutely love it there. It's been an absolute blessing. I'm so happy that they were willing to take a chance on me. I didn't have the most conventional chef resume going into things. I have only worked in a couple restaurants in Anchorage, and that was about 10 years ago. The last 10 years of my life I spent working in the oil field as a cook out there, down in the cook inlet oil rigs and up at Dead Horse. I was a supervisor there, handling a lot of things, and the job was pretty similar in some ways, but also very different in a lot of ways compared to being a chef here in Anchorage. And
I would imagine
that transition was very interesting, but a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was kind of curious too. So I told you previously, is like I came from the restaurant industry too, and I'm always curious, like, what other restaurants have you worked in? Blah 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 blah. So like that's crazy that you were in oil rigs.
Yeah,
that's like kind of like something I don't even understand. In besides comedy,
it's a whole nother fucking world out there. Like it's wild. It was really cool. My favorite working up in Dead Horse was fun, but I mainly worked with all local Alaskan people. And I kind of got stuck in a really sweet gig when I was up at Dead Horse, but also it wasn't that exciting.
Yeah.
Like it was easy money and it was fun. But when I was out on the Cook Inlet, the job was much harder, but also I was meeting people from around the world on a daily, where they're bringing in engineers from Brazil and mechanics from China and rig hand workers from Alabama.
Right.
Like, and watching all three of those people sit together at a table is pure entertainment.
And you're like, here's some food. Yeah.
Which camps were you at in Dead Horse?
Dead Horse, I mainly stayed at the Dead Horse Aviation Center. The DAC is what they call it. It's
old DAC.
Yep. It's
he spent some time up there, right?
Oh yeah, what were you doing up there?
I was working for basically in the dispatch office.
Okay.
Real boring stuff, but near
it's
the airport.
cool. It's cool, Kyle.
Yeah, but I mean,
don't talk down to your past self.
Not myself, to the job.
Well, that's the job.
But that's the big thing, is that whole place up there runs off of the food that, like, I mean, that's what everybody talks about, is like, oh man, you can get, the steak nights we used to have and all these different things at our camp. I mean, that's like what everybody look forward to each day, because you work your 12 and then you're like, or your 10, whatever you're on. And it's like, man, it's taco night. That's all I'm living for right now.
So
my family's gone, everybody. I just want some tacos.
So for people who aren't familiar with what they're talking about, Dead Horse, there's, I've never been. So maybe someone should explain just really
Prudhoe
quickly
Bay,
for the people who don't know.
Up on top of Alaska, essentially. Very north, big oil and gas kind of hub. And then there's camps that are outside of this area. And I mean, it's basically a Arctic desert, essentially. Nothing up there, not much wildlife. And it's all these roughnecks and engineers and different people that work up there to make lots of money for working generally 2 on 2 off or 3 on 3 off, kind of what would you call it?
Hitches.
And
Hitches.
so it's unique characters up there. Very unique.
Well, I don't know. I mean, not to interrupt you. You did a great job, by the way. But the whole idea of 2 weeks working fully and then 2 weeks off, and like when I was like broke and I had like $20 to my name, I was like, fuck yeah, I'll do it. I'll do whatever I need. But like now I'm just like, I don't know if I could. I don't know if I could. I don't know if I could last.
I always
honestly.
like to view it, I have a similar way of looking at it now, where it's like, I don't think I could go back to it.
But you had the experience.
I do believe that, like, for that time in my life, that was a great thing for me. And I'm glad I chose that for that time. But it definitely is a different way of living. Like, and I've always talked to people. People have always been like, "Oh, should I apply there?" Or, can I use you as a reference or something like that? And my thing always was for them, look, I'm not
Don't fucking do it. Don't do it.
That you're not the right person, or that it takes a special kind of person, but it takes a specific kind of person to be able to live that lifestyle.
Yeah,
for a long time.
It really is. Constantly you see people getting hired on, and the biggest red flags that I was always confused why our hiring department never really looked at was if they're in a new relationship or if they have a new kid.
Yeah.
Those were always just a recipe for disaster. They never lasted more than 2 hitches. If they had a new girlfriend or were insecure about their relationship in any way, oh boy, those guys would just burn themselves to the ground so fast.
She's cheating.
Yeah. And new babies. New babies are something that a lot of people don't realize how much they're going to miss.
Yeah. I can only imagine. I can only imagine. The one thing, the one reason why I did want to work up there was the story of, he was in the Magnificent Seven, and he's an Alaskan. He was the native character. I can't remember.
Oh, right. Yeah, I do remember hearing
He's
about
from
that.
Alaska. And so he would do 2 weeks on up there and then fly down to Los Angeles and take acting classes and audition and fly back. But he's from Alaska. So he'd like make a little stop and then go back up to. And so I was like, when I was young, when I younger, I was like, oh my gosh, I could do that. I need to get a job on the slope so I can make a ton of money and then go down to LA and learn and then go back to, So I thought that was kind of a phenomenal idea. So if you use it correctly, and if you don't have a newborn
or a new relationship,
but it's also
or an unfaithful spouse.
I would imagine it's a good work ethic too. Like you're just like, well, I'm here to work and I'm going to be working for the next 2 weeks. And it's just like, you just kind of get in that grind, that mindset. And so I would imagine there's some positives, but the whole idea of not having a life for 2 weeks other than work.
Well, it's essentially 6 months. Because that's what it equals out to.
Yeah, you're right.
Mine
You're
was
right.
actually 8 months. I was working 2 and 1s or 4 and 2s.
Oh my
So that's
goodness,
8 months out of the year gone right there. It was amazing for my lifestyle at the time. I don't have any kids, no pets. I had no relationship throughout my 20s. And so like every time I'd come home, it'd either be, I'm either going to stay home and relax or I'm going to travel.
Yeah.
And I got to take off and go a lot of places.
Did you do a lot of traveling?
I did. I did a decent amount, not as much as some of the people that work out there to travel. But, I got out there. I got to go to some cool towns, visit some cool places, see some friends.
What's one that pops out of your head that you loved? That was your favorite?
I got to go to Riot Fest in Chicago on a whim.
Hell yeah.
And that was incredibly fun. I was just working. I was beat down. I had worked a double hitch because someone called out. So I was like, sure, I'll work 4 weeks instead of 2. And then right like at 3.5 week mark, my friend texted me. He goes, hey, Blink-182 is reuniting for the first time. And I'm going to go to Chicago for this. And I said,
so you went and saw Blink-182?
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
I mean, shoot, what was this? Like 10 years ago now, 2013.
Wow.
Yeah. Blink-182. The Replacements,
Matt
and Fall Out Boy were the main headliners.
I saw
Riot
Fall Out Boy. They're actually a good show.
That was a great show.
At the time, I was like embarrassed to say that because I was like 18 and I did security for this festival in Memphis. Security, I'm 18, like I already got a dad bod.
Okay, everybody come through. I don't care.
No, actually, I'm just to tell this story really quick. When I was doing security, so our job, me and my buddy, we were supposed to do the parking lot and park people. Super easy, right? I had a backpack full of my lunch, whatever. I left that and within eyesight next to a street light. And so, but we kind of get all of a sudden, we get like a bunch of cars and we're like kind of moving down farther and farther and farther away. And then like all of a sudden we're like pretty far away. And then I see this cop roping off with fucking caution tape.
We got a bomb.
Bro. And he's like he's on his walkie and he's moving people back. Like, go off into this area. Do not go around. They literally, and I was like, excuse me, sir, officer, what's going on? He's like, there's a possible situation over here. And I was like, that's my backpack. He's like, oh, it's yours? I was like, yeah, I'm working.
Peanut butter and jelly.
I was like, I don't know where else to put it. He's like, well, don't they have a security house for you? I was like, I don't know. We just told to come park cars, and that's what we're doing. I was like, that's my backpack. So anyways, it was by the end, it was 2 or 3 cops had kind of converged on our location.
Guys, if you guys could walk about 3 feet away from this potential bomb, that's kind of the blast radius we figured out for this thing.
But I mean, I did appreciate it because of course, shit like that is just you got to be on your fucking game anyway. But that was my experience, and then I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna get cut and I'm gonna go watch Fall Out Boy.
The one thing I'm thinking about with the slope or Prudhoe Bay, Dead Horse, whatever you want to call it, and then working in the food industry is these seem like 2 recipes when I think about them, because I've worked in both of them. Humor and comedy, because the sense of humors that I ran into in Dead Horse were or at least the characters you talk to. I heard so many jokes up there from guys that have been passing them down for 30 years and all these things. I was just in shock that I'm like, these guys are funny. They're dark humor, real gross, real perverted. You have a whole mix, and that kind of overlaps, I think. When I think of the food industry, I think of Waiting, the movie. Yeah. The whole kind of cook. Yeah. And playing games with the goat and all that stuff. And I'm like, these seem like 2 perfect ingredients for developing funniness, or at least sharpening it. And so is that kind of where you found that, or did you always have an interest before then?
That's a great question. I've never actually made that connection for sure. You are 100% touching points on real things.
Yeah.
In both areas. So right now this is a really fun full circle moment for me.
Okay.
Working up on the slope. It was mainly it was like my first 5+ years were in the oil rigs down in the Cook Inlet. And then I think it was like 2015 through 18 was when I spent it. 2018 through 21 was when I spent up on the slope. That was when I discovered podcasts. Like, this is when I first started coming across podcasts.
Right.
And started listening to them. It was a handful of my favorite comedians that I realized they all had their own podcasts, and started listening to those. And then I was allowed to wear headphones at work. I was by myself 12 hours a day, 28 days in a row up there. So I needed something to keep my sanity, and podcasts started doing it for me. I started feeling involved in things or learning about things that I liked. It was mainly all comedians that I listened to. And, comedy was something that I've always loved. Who doesn't like a good joke? Stand-up comedians are always somebody that I looked up to. At the same tier of like athletes and celebrities that I loved. And then it wasn't until listening to those podcasts that I don't know. I've said before, like, oh, maybe I just thought that they just became the comedians.
Right.
I didn't know how you became a comedian.
Overnight success kind of thing.
Yeah,
like,
and it wasn't until listening to podcasts where I find out, like, you start going to open mics, you start doing shows.
Yeah.
Anybody can get there if they're good enough, and the reality that opportunity could be there kind of presented itself to me. And that was, like I said, when I started writing jokes, and I just started writing them for myself, writing them for fun. I had a friend who was on a similar mental grind in Hawaii. He had moved down to Hawaii and built himself a shack on some land, and was grinding it out, writing music 12 hours a day, trying to come up with 3 songs per day. He had some experience, toured with a couple bands before as a keys player, a singer, a guitar player, but was really trying to grind it out and just start promoting himself, pushing things out, start writing for songwriting competitions and auditioning for things. And I think it was while he was doing that, we were constantly sending each other jokes and songs. And then because he really had nothing going on in Hawaii, I had nothing going on the North Slope. So we'd be on the phone for like 3 to 5 hours a day.
Wow.
For years at a time. And we created this incredible bond. And for my buddy, it was amazing to see. It was amazing, then heartbreaking, and then still amazing again. He ended up hooking back up with some old friends, got signed to a band, and started touring the world with Red Jumpsuit Apparatus.
Oh, you're talking about Danny.
Danny Resnick.
Yeah.
My guy. Yeah.
Yeah. I did. It's funny because I don't know if I've ever met Danny, but we played in Change Point Youth Group worship together.
Way.
Yeah.
Amazing. I played bass for my church worship team growing up.
Oh, look at us. Worship team.
When you said I can only imagine, I was about to mention, I just recently saw a clip of a stand-up comedian who went up on stage, and his opening song was the Lord, I lift your name on high. And then he was like trying to get the crowd hyped and being like, the lyrics.
Yeah.
It's one of the funniest.
This is where the echo is. Come on, guys. Come on. Get the spirit moving through you. I love that stuff.
Oh, yeah. Another one. Our God isn't awesome or whatever.
Oh,
awesome.
my
God, he
Oh, boy.
reigns.
Yep.
With the motions.
I remember, yeah.
Anyway, not to derail. Okay, so I love that you had a sounding board, because I think that's like important for anything or anybody. I think when you're working on something, like when it's music or comedy, or I would imagine, for me it's videos. It's like, hey, what do you think of this? It fucking sucks. Redo it. And it's like, okay, let me try it again. How about this? Oh, better. Okay, but what if you try?
Sucks.
It still sucks, but what if you tried this? It's like, okay, actually, that's not a bad idea. So it's like, it's having those people that you trust. There's like,
Huge.
Tim Ferriss will say, like, the 5 people around you, you're an average of those people. But like also people who are doing creative things, and it's like you kind of gravitate towards those people. And then you're also like using them as like, I don't know, a tool, I guess.
Yeah.
And then you're also being a tool for them too. So I think, not that you're a tool.
Well, yeah. It depends what your other.
I mean, we're only like halfway through the podcast, so we don't know yet.
We're still learning.
Yeah.
I'll wait for that final evaluation.
Yeah. Okay, so you're on the slope. You're kind of writing jokes. Where are you finding this inspiration to kind of get into this?
Oh man.
Besides the podcast, but it's like, are you kind of like looking and being like, oh man, there's this funny thing. Food's funny, or this. I think I would imagine, and you can go into your process too a little bit of like writing. But I mean, like for me, I would imagine that a comedian would just be walking down the street and then being like, "Oh, that's funny," like observational or whatever.
Sure, yeah.
Which you're not wrong,
right? Yeah. But like, you don't have that opportunity. You're stuck.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good observation there.
I'm gonna write that down. I'm gonna write that down. That's funny, Stephen.
I feel like a lot of them were based off of stories or things inspired by things that had happened. I remember, like, as I was writing those things, I thought so there's like different styles of comedy within stand-up comedy. You have like one-liners, or you have like storytellers, or you have people that kind of a mix in between. Some of them are more leaning in certain directions. Certain people like really take hold of certain topics and make that kind of like genre theirs. A lot of mine was based off of stories or events that happened to myself or others around me, things that I witnessed. And then there were just a lot of real dumb, silly ones that were for me.
Hell yeah. You got it.
Those are
one
some of
for
my
them,
favorites.
one for me.
Yeah.
10 for them, one for me. You always got to throw them in.
Yeah. I always think about like when people are like, I'm going to take up drawing or something like that. It's like, if you said that to me, I'd be like, I have no idea what to draw about. And that's my first thing when I think of like, why don't you just write jokes? And I'm like, well, I'm going to write, what's funny? And then you start like over analyzing everything and to be like, well, there was this one thing that happened to me, but then how do you turn something that personally happened to you where these people were not there and it explains something that you find funny and turn it funny for everybody in a room? And so that kind of goes back into what you were saying is like your probably inner voice that you were kind of using to write stuff from versus telling people like the joke was very different. There was some misalignment there, it sounded like.
Yeah. There was a whole part where trying to break it down, and I'm still like working through that, trying to figure out why what I thought would be funny was so different from what actually turns out to be funny. There was a whole part where learning how to cut the fat is something that is still so important with storytelling that I struggle with so much, where the thank God for open mics where I get to go and work out things, try it out, see where the reactions come from it, and adjust from there.
So like, give me an example of like, do you have some like retired jokes that you're like, can you like run it down why something didn't work, like a premise that you were trying to tell and like what you realized was bad about it, like, or had to change?
I actually do have a really good example for that specifically. There was something that I went through back in 2012. I got busted for selling some marijuana.
Ooh. I didn't know we were hanging out with a criminal. Are we guilty by association now?
Sorry, Mom and Dad.
We're outlaws now, Mom and Dad.
This is more to your mom and dad. My parents already know.
He was trying to stop a drug deal is what happened. It was
it got pinned on him.
It's funny you say that. It was a whole situation.
You're funny, dude. Kyle.
It was a whole thing where like I pulled into a car's parking lot. I wasn't even really selling weed at the time. Like I just had a half ounce. I used to sell a lot more.
Right.
I just had a little bit of personal. A close friend hits me up. He wants $20 worth. Sure, why not? I'm on the way to work. And I pull up to him in the car's parking lot. We make the quick transaction. And then as he's hopping back into his car, I'm not exaggerating, over 20 vehicles just pulled up on us from every angle.
Was he a fucking narc?
Red and blue lights started hitting all the dashboards. Guns were drawn, and like they were all screaming at us. It was this whole thing, and they pull me out of the car. They're searching through all this stuff, and at the same time, while they were rolling up on us, a car on the other side of the parking lot just takes the fuck off, peels out of the parking lot. So this, and everybody was unmarked vehicles, like not dressed up, civilian clothes. And the leader of the crew or whatever pulls me into his Silverado, and he's like, all right, okay, so this is like the questioning part. He tries to get me to like turn on people, and I'm like, buddy, this is such a small amount of weed. I'll take the charges, but why the hell are you guys here? Turns out I ruined a 6-month heroin bust that the fucking narc team had been working on for so long.
Oh
and
my
the dude like vented to me. He's like, I've been fucking working on this shit. Like, me and our friends have been intercepting phone calls and like getting people to turn on this motherfucker, and you just ruined a fucking 6-month investigation. Like, this was supposed to be a 3-pound heroin bust.
Excuse me, sir? I ruined it?
Approached me.
Apparently you haven't been doing your work that well.
And I'm not even going to tell you where I'm hiding the other stuff.
So that was the funnier part to this story. Like, that was what happened. The funny part was that my roommates at the time, they worked at an old head shop that's no longer in business anymore, the Black Market downtown.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of not in business anymore because they were running that place into the ground by stealing clientele. Somebody would come in and be like, I want that bong. And then they would be like, okay, meet me at my apartment tonight and I'll sell it to you for half price cash. And
So
then,
a place called the Black Market was actually
weird. No way,
doing
right?
illegal things?
Careful with your name. Yeah.
Strange. But my roommates were doing that at the time. I was kind of the middleman. I would show up, give them some cash for the camera. They would give me a big old brown paper bag with another brown paper bag upside down on top of it. I'd take that home. We'd get to sell things. And that morning I went and picked up a brown paper bag for my friend, and it was sitting in the back of my car. I didn't realize it. I didn't think it would get me into any trouble because whatever, clean bongs or water pipes at that point, they're for tobacco use. What I didn't realize was that my roommate was just newly lesbianed, and she instead gave me a double brown paper bag of all the sex toys that she's going to try out. So I had like whips, chains, ball gags, fucking double-ended dildos. These cops out, they were like, can we search your car? I'm like, yeah, I got fucking nothing to hide.
Oh,
and
hell.
they rip that bag open. They call every police officer that was in the area, like, Johnson, come look at this.
No, it's a Johnson.
I was handcuffed against the truck, and then all these cops are just like pointing at my car and then pointing at me and being like, him? That? No. It's a great time.
Dude,
it's a fun
yeah,
story.
okay,
I
that
don't
is
know
a-
how to tell that on stage.
That's a great story.
So long, and it's so weird. It's so wordy. There's like backstory to it. I have to cut in and out. And so it's something like that where like I knew as I started writing jokes, I got to tell this story on stage.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know how to do it. Like doing it
Sure.
in this kind of situation is fun. It's there's because also too we can like talk about it in between things, but trying to translate something like that was a huge event in my life.
Right.
And trying to figure out how to work that out solo on stage is still something that I struggle with.
Interesting.
Is that like maybe that could be like your Bert Kreischer machine story, right?
Okay.
You got to take your shirt off?
So I knew that going into it, I would start being like, guys, in 2019, I ruined a heroin bust.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, like eventually maybe you bring it back out once you have the time to be able to develop a story on stage. Because imagine with open mics and the sets you're getting, you have a very dialed time, right? Like give or take. I mean, I don't know. But maybe that's something you can tell us about too. Because I don't know. I'm always assuming like they give you
Give me a
2
tight
minutes.
5.
Yeah.
Give me a tight 2.
Yeah. So that's that's great. That's a great question for it too.
Just killing it, Kyle.
God, if you could see what's written on my hand, like it is wild.
It's like Memento. He's got it on his arm.
It's a bunch of
How many
PlayStation codes.
lungs do you get? Yeah.
God, it's smudged.
Yes. So yes, this is a story that I know I will eventually figure out.
Right.
But it's something where like every few months I try to rewrite it. Be like, okay, I've learned a few things since the last time I tried to write this. Let me see if I can't actually turn this into something smooth.
Right.
And the past couple times it's been like, okay, each time it's gotten better, but I still have like a few hitches that I want to get over where I'm like, I'm doing this and it's getting this reaction, but I feel like I could make it better in this certain point. So working on something like that, we have a few open mics here in town. The one that I frequent is the Wednesday night mic at Coots.
Oh yeah.
It's a comedy open mic. It's sign-ups at 8, starts at 8:30 every Wednesday. And if you ask the Beartooth, I go there every Wednesday for religious purposes because that is church.
Hallelujah.
It's where all the comedians in town essentially get together every Wednesday night, and that's where we work on our shit.
So it's you on stage in front of a bunch of other comedians who are judging the
essentially,
fuck out of
usually that's the
it makes
majority
it
of the group.
a little bit more terrifying.
Every now and then we do get just people that happen to be at Coots. Some people come for the open mic.
Holy
for
shit!
fun.
Someone's actually at Coots. There's one person in the audience.
Who
tonight,
are
guys.
you?
Yeah.
For the most part, it's very obvious.
You a cop?
When someone
You a
new
cop?
is there.
I got a story.
God, oh man, that would be great. But yeah, no. So open mics are a lot of places, so like I'm always trying to write. I'm trying to write new things. Sometimes inspiration hits me, and that's one of the biggest, most frustrating things is that when inspiration hits, it took me a while to learn you have to write it down in the moment or you will forget it. It's so frustrating because so many times it hits as I'm falling asleep. And then you wake up, you write it down, your brain starts running through it, and then good luck trying to
You
go back
always
to
tell
sleep.
yourself like, I'll remember this.
Yeah,
I'll
it's
always
so
remember
you
this.
will
good.
never remember
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating.
Got to get up. Got to do it. Yeah, I get that.
Sometimes too, like I like to try to prompt myself. I have like fun like writing exercises. Like even before I came here, just to get my brain working, because I woke up from a nap as I was at dinner. I just went to the Beartooth for dinner, sat at the bar, and I like to look through headlines just to get things started, see if something funny pops up. And
UFOs.
yeah.
Biden, all of them.
Tory Lanez is going to jail, and Biden just claimed a new national monument, and someone also got shot for threatening Biden.
Huh.
Didn't do anything, just threatened him. The FBI shot his ass.
Oh.
I need to read more on that story, but that was very interesting. It was in Utah.
I would imagine that would have happened a lot in 2020.
There's more to the story.
I'm sure there is, but I was like, it can't just be like a threat. It's got to be a little bit more than that.
Yeah, you never know.
You're right. You know what?
Somebody
I don't
could
know.
That's why it's a headline.
I don't know, and that's why we're fixing ourselves.
I have to know about bombing
Oh, God.
because I think that is the number one deterrent for. Listen, everybody gets told they're funny for the most part sometime in their life, and then that thought goes through their head and be like, maybe if I just like did open mic, I'd kill it, probably sign a deal.
Right.
Like it's pretty wild
That
how
one
much talent.
person.
Yeah, how much talent I'm wasting not being a comic. And but I think realistically, is bombing just a part of the job? Because I think a lot of people think that they would never have to deal with that. I think bombing is something that is a deterrent for most people because it maybe means that you aren't funny to that group. And I feel like that hurts you to a level. So what's your experience with that and what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah. Starting off, my first few mics, horrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely horrendous. Heartbreaking. But there were enough giggles to make me think that I have something.
Sure.
There were no hard laughs. But it was enough to get me going to start writing. The community here is extremely welcoming. They're so amazing with just how encouraging they were for stepping in. And I'm glad that my first, like, what I would call a real bomb didn't happen until like I was over a year in and knew that I was able to make crowds laugh before I experienced my first bomb, because holy fuck, that shit hurt.
Yeah.
It was an event out at the Settlers Bay Lodge out in the valley. This guy put it on, and I had done a couple events with him before. His crowd was generally a lot of families and older folks. And that's not necessarily my crowd.
Yeah.
He pays great, so I'll take every gig he gives me.
Right.
But
that's a particular set of skills.
that
Liam
that
Neeson?
show that I did there, it was written out and performed, and was a for sure 20-minute set that I was doing for featuring before headliners at the time. And I get up there, I start telling my jokes, just crickets all the way through. The most interaction that I had was that about halfway through, I get one sympathy, "Aw."
Oh my God.
And it, I'm at that point about halfway through, I'm telling my joke, nothing hits, and I just pretend like they laughed and moved on and just started telling the next one.
Thanks, guys.
Confidence. And then it was when I got the sympathy odd, then I was like, God, this is going great, guys, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then just kept going. I just kept my head down. Now I've learned a lot of ways to approach things differently, but at that point I was just like, I'm going to tell my jokes, I'm going to do them the way that they work, and maybe one of them will hit. That 20-minute set came out in a sweaty 13 minutes. I walked off the stage defeated, and luckily haven't had that happen since.
Wow.
Yeah. Do you what are some strategies you would do if you felt the crowd? Because I mean, the whole thing is the crowd. Essentially, you can deal with drunk crowds, sober crowds, wrong crowds, all these different things, and you can tell the same set in front of 5 different crowds, and it will hit differently per the crowd. And so, what would you do to change that on the fly?
I think now the way that I would approach that is if the first 1 or 2 don't hit, address it. Start talking to people specifically.
Crowd work.
Doing a crowd work. We're working into it, being
nice shirt.
Maybe addressing the fact that there were 2 12-year-olds front row while I'm telling dick jokes.
Yeah.
It's there are a few things like that. It's just just being more in the moment, not trying to be not trying to just push out a set that I had, but really adjusting to the people in the room.
Do you think that's what happens a lot? Because I mean, when I'm looking at TikTok or social media, a lot of times you see a lot of crowd work or heckler reactions, and I'm almost like, this feels so out of the moment. I wonder if it's not going well for them, so they've decided to pivot into like that. Because like you're saying, you're like, I need to adapt because people aren't going with the set, so I need to change it up. And so I almost feel like sometimes the heckler stuff, I feel like they hope for that if the set's going bad, because then it allows them to kind of get back in their wheelhouse of making fun of somebody or like focusing the energy on this guy that we can all get around that we hate.
Hecklers. The main thing, I feel like the answer to that question is no. When hecklers start heckling, usually the plan of attack you want to go is
Personal.
Just try to get them to quiet down. Usually the first few times is like, you're not looking for an interaction. You're just trying to shut them down.
Sure.
Right.
You don't want to be mean. You don't want to turn the crowd against you with the first thing you say to that person. Usually, if it's going to get to that point, that person has to say a few things. And when you notice that the crowd doesn't like it anymore, that's when you know, oh, they're on my side. Boom, we're going in.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And that way can be a much more chill way of keeping the crowd on your side while shutting down the drunk person who wants to be part of the show.
Do you have a few like things you say like loaded in the cannon, ready to go? If you
Oh man, I wish I was better about that. There are so many comedians, even in this local Anchorage scene, that are so much better with a quick retort to shut someone down.
I would say I think it's Cass Smiley that I've seen just destroy someone.
Yeah.
yeah, she's so good, and so it's like she comes to mind like locally, especially.
No, she's really good at it. That person can shut someone down. They do. I have a fun joke about them that I've been waiting to tell, like where it's a situation where I'm on a show that Cass is on. Because usually she runs like the festival, the
Before You Die
festival, an amazing comedy festival for the Anchorage scene and the Alaska scene in general. But she also does dominatrix stuff for people.
We should get her on.
You should
be like,
you should get.
Don't
Cass
talk
on.
about comedy. Talk about this dominatrix.
Fuck, I mean,
thing.
also she's a way better person to talk to about comedy than me. But yeah, one of my fun things is when the person that's running the show wants to let the comedian on stage know that their time's almost up, they flash a light at them. So it's called getting the light. And then usually that means like you have 1 minute or 3 minutes. Usually it's a predetermined amount of time when they flash the light at you. So a fun thing is I always wanted to say that I want to run the light whenever Cass is running the show, just because I want her to get on stage and demean me.
Nice.
Yeah. So when you've dealt with hecklers, what do they generally? Is it usually drunk people for the most part that you feel?
Usually it's drunk people. I feel like 9 times out of 10, it's the friend who thinks they're funny.
Right. And they gotta be.
It's the person who ends up finally coming to an open mic. Everybody at an open mic is just the funniest person in their friend group.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that's when you find out when they're actually funny or if they just repeat memes and tweets.
Yes.
That's a real thing at open mics where you see these guys come up for their first time and then they're just repeating templates that they've seen, telling their favorite dad jokes, and you're like, that's funny.
But it's not yours.
That's not stand-up comedy.
For Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get that.
You can definitely see where people realize, and then for so many people, that would be their first set. And then that's kind of where you see things filter out, where people learn that if you want to get better at it, you need to write your own things, and then either they disappear or they come back with their own material. And it's a fun way to be like to see who actually wants to put in the work to be funny.
Yeah.
Or
I get that.
Yeah.
But I am also very curious because, I think we've talked about it on here. It's like, I'm a musician. I played shows, and there's been times where like we've gotten cut off, or like, like the people, like it was a room full of people from wall to wall, and then as soon as we played our first song, everybody went to go get a smoke break. Like, I don't know. Remember that?
Yeah.
Las Vegas?
Vegas.
Like 250 people, and then like everybody left.
heartbreak.
Yeah. It was definitely a hard one. So but see, it's different when there's a group of you, right? You guys can all take the fail, right? As a collective. Now, I want to talk about the mental health of comedy. Now, and then it doesn't have to be like a specific, like, oh, I'm taking care of myself. It's just like, what goes through your head after that bombing that you did, where no one laughed, and it was like 20 minutes set down to 13. Like, what goes through your head? What gets you fucking back up on the stage, dude? Like, what is it that like you pump yourself up about, and you're like, all right, no, I'm actually really good at this? Because I think most people, there's that imposter syndrome, right? And then that would creep up, and then you'd be like, you know what? You're right. I fucking suck. Like, how do you not say that when you have a tough show, which you don't have them anymore, but like, like when a joke doesn't go right or something like that.
Yeah. So actually the part that hurt the worst about the bomb wasn't the bomb itself. It was after the show, when the people in the crowd started coming up to me and being like, it's okay, buddy, you'll get there.
Oh.
Or being like, hey, we've all had our first time. You're just going to keep getting better. I've been doing this for a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This hurts really bad.
No matter what you say, it's still going to hurt.
Or the absolute worst one, which was meant to feel like the absolute best, where people come up and be like, hey, buddy, great job out there. You did great. You killed it. And you're like, oh, you're just straight lying to my face now.
Yeah.
I didn't hear a single laugh.
Where were you?
Yeah.
You whore.
Honestly, the confidence to get back up on stage after that, I didn't actually have that much of a problem with it. I feel like I out of so many ways that I'm insecure about myself, somehow in this I'm overly secure about myself, and was able to just chalk it up to being like, that's not me. That's not normal. This was a interesting situation or a weird isolated incident. Something
One
that
off
is
there.
Yeah,
Right.
something that is. I mean, because of that, I've been paying attention to different ways to handle that kind of situation and took it as a learning experience.
Right.
Like the way I would think about it is you've approached girls in the past at like a bar, right?
Me?
Yes. Like,
Yes.
or
Yes,
in
I have.
general,
Yes, I have.
approaching somebody that you're interested in is sometimes it goes really well. Sometimes it goes terrible. Sometimes you wonder if you should ever do that again because it went so badly. And it's like, you still do it.
That's good. I like that.
Because it's like, how many times did you walk up to a girl and she's not interested? And it's like, it doesn't really mean you're never going to do it again. It just means that one wasn't interested. And so like, I feel like that's kind of the mentality you'd have to have is like, the next one could be the best show of my life or the door opening show that I have.
Mhm.
And so I hope that's kind of how you would look at it. And most comedians, because you can't look at which way you're trending per se, because it's all relative to the crowd. Like we keep going back to this, but it's the crowd. Like you have to connect with them in some way, shape, or form. And you're not always going to have the best crowds every night. Like it's just impossible. And so, treat it like,
You're
approaching
reminding me too. It's very, because I just talked to DJ Spencer Lee, who we're going to have on in a couple of weeks.
Oh, nice.
And he was talking, because like I've always been interested in learning DJing too, right? As well as comedy. I think they're both just fascinating things to learn and to get better at. And so he was telling me about like rooms, and it's like if you don't win someone over, like a crowd over, then you got to switch it up. Like you got to pivot. And so it's very similar, but a little different, because then you can always like, you know what, I'm just gonna, but nope, that song, not that song. Like you can't do that as a comedian. You can't be like, you know what, this story's not working out, guys. I'm not even going to tell you the end.
Let me just scrap my set. I'm free from.
So yes and no, actually. There are like some jokes that I have where if it's a longer form joke, and there, maybe I have like, you have your premise, which is your initial like a minute or two setup or something like that. And then following things that involve like tags is what we call them, but like little jokes in between.
Tag?
Yeah.
Tags.
So like for like a joke, you'll hear a comic say a joke and then like blah, 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 blah. Boom. People laugh right there. And then they'll go da, 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 da. And then there's another laugh, and da-da-da-da-da. And then they can just add little things at the end. Tag it onto the end. Tom
Segura is pretty good at that.
One of the best ever. He's on my Mount Rushmore for sure.
Yeah.
So I have like some jokes that are a little bit longer form, and if I find that they're not hitting the laughs at certain points where the things normally get it, I do have like some jokes have a bailout point where you're like, oh, I'm gonna bring that last tag. Maybe I have 5 jokes before I get there. We're gonna scoot that up to right now and move on. And just give them closure on this. There you go. Haha, that's the end of that story. Moving on to the next one. But something a little quicker, maybe finding yourself a different channel or a different direction to head in, being like, okay, so obviously this joke doesn't work. That next joke was on the same topic, so maybe we're just going to completely avoid the following and move on to my whole next category that I was going to work on, or my different angle that I was going to push.
Yeah. Like all that's going through my head right now is like Tom Cruise in like Minority Report with like the dragon things. Like, I got to get this joke over here. Oh my, that's not going to work. Because I imagine, are you looking at individuals while you're on stage, or are you kind of scanning?
That's a great question. That was something else that I was gonna mention too. Something that I've taken into recently.
He keeps saying you've got great questions. I keep asking questions too. He's never said it once.
I got that one.
Recently, I have started picking out individuals and being like, "You haven't laughed yet. This one's for you." Not saying that to them, not addressing them, but like picking out certain goals in the crowd, basically, to be like, okay,
cool.
If I can make that person laugh, this person laugh, and this person laugh, like, and to like, there's so many weird things when it comes to like getting a crowd laughing, knowing like how contagious laughter is, having a good laugher in the crowd. Can change the game. Having someone with what would normally be called like an obnoxious laugh in a different setting is like a blessing for comedians.
I can see that, yeah.
I think of the Anthony Jeselnik. I watch a lot of his stuff on Netflix, and there's one.
My Rushmore.
Yes, I love him, and he has one set. I forget which special it was, but this girl this older lady with an obnoxious laugh, and she was laughing at every single thing. And eventually he has to address it.
Yeah.
And then that just like changed the whole show, like in a great way. You know, he's like, "What's your name?" And she says it. And he's like, "Is that your husband next to you? What's wrong with her?" And she starts laughing. He's like, "Never mind." Like we're just like gently tearing her apart, but like in a fun way. And I was like, he's the kind of guy that's a total prick, like in his delivery, but he had a way of like subtly tearing her apart without like being too mean about it.
Right.
Because I mean, you know, if she was maybe a jerk or something, you know, he might have gone harder, but I was like, that was very well handled, like on the fly, like making her a part of the show, making her a spectacle, but not maybe making this woman like cry at the end of the show.
Right.
And I was like, that's powerful to be able to do that on the fly, because, you know, usually you have kind of one technique for maybe addressing people, but as somebody as mean as he is generally, I'm like, oh, he is a nice guy. And then
it's something I wanted to touch on too, like improv.
right.
It's good improv. Is that something you've kind of dove into before?
It is
Divin.
Divin.
I
Damn it, I
divided
was close.
into it. You know where I got my most improv work? Church.
Oh.
Church camps.
One of our favorite subjects.
I could dive deep into it too. Dad was my Sunday school teacher, youth pastor, all the way through.
Did you go to a church camp up here?
Korean church camps.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We were. My mom is Korean, so we were heavily involved in the Korean church. And since my dad was the only white guy in those Korean churches, every time he'd walk into the door, they'd be like, "Oh, you're going to be our Sunday school teacher because you can
Clearly
speak to our children."
Yeah, clearly. Yeah.
Yeah,
The white guy.
The white guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How far we've come. How far we've fallen too. Improv.
Yeah, improv through, I think my first experiences with improv were through like the church camps where they would tell us like, "Oh, you gotta each camp, I don't know if this was for all the camps, but our church would always do it where you would have a skit night. You break up into groups of like 5 or 6, and then you get like a certain topic. You got to talk about one thing or the other in the Bible, and then create your own skits out of it. And that was where my team won every single year.
Oh, hell yeah. Okay.
And we had a lot of fun with it. I didn't realize exactly what that would translate to until much
dick
later.
jokes.
I got away with some wild stuff for a church camp. Like in one, we were straight up insinuating that Megan Fox had sex with a transformer and played Marvin Gaye's "Let's Get It On" through a microphone. They loved it. Killed the crowd.
Sign me up for that church. Let's go.
I need to go.
The baby was baby transformer Jesus.
Oh, clearly. Wow.
Yeah.
I would never, I don't think I would have gotten, I think I would have, my dad ran the camp and I would have gotten kicked out.
Yeah. Stephen, you're exiled.
Yeah. I would have been, I would have been fucking Jonah or whatever, you know, the one that just got pushed out. Yeah, so that's interesting, especially Baby Transformer. That's a new way to tell the Christmas story
of life.
Yeah. Merry Christmas, everybody. Here's Baby Transformer Jesus.
Your savior in disguise.
Yeah. That's gold.
That would be good.
So you kind of, you know, had a little bit of improv, but I mean, is it something kind of like you're looking to do more of? Because for me, I am.
You just posted something about trying to get an improv troupe
I am
together.
obsessed with like improv. I went to one fucking class up here, right?
Yeah.
One class, and of course there is
that one.
He doesn't do it anymore. He worked at Second City in Chicago, and then he was up here for the pandemic, and then he was like, "Well, I guess while I'm here, I'm gonna hold like, you know, close knit things." And so I found him on Google. Just happened to go to one, and then after the pandemic, you know, let its claws out of our skin, he went back down to Chicago. And then now there is one at Anchorage Community Theater, but they do it on Wednesdays, which we do our podcast on. So it's like, damn it. So yeah, I'm obsessed with like the whole idea of improv. I think it's phenomenal. The one I did, like, yeah, I didn't do well. There's only 5 people there, and like 3 of them were like in their 60s.
Yeah.
But like, it just was something like phenomenal. There's something about performing improv and you're just coming up with a story and your trust in this person next to you who you're doing a scene with, that I'm just absolutely like enamored with.
I have a few friends a few local comedians, Goldie Gold, Goldie Gold, Mao Tosi, and Derek Reed are 3 local stand-up comedians that are part of the local improv troupe, Mostly Melanin. They perform every so often. I think it's once a month. I'll send you over their information. They have an Instagram and all that too.
Do they teach too? That's the one thing. I'm like, I'm obsessed with.
I don't know. I know that they've had classes.
Yeah.
I know one of my friends joined them recently.
Okay.
It's not that far long ago. And also too, even though it's called Mostly Melanin, my friend Derek is very white, the whitest. So I don't think it would be
missing melanin.
Out of this
missing
world.
melanin.
I
don't know if my own trope.
I don't know if that would fucking fly.
Yeah.
But
Mostly melatonin. He's very sleepy.
Yeah.
I am obsessed with improv though. So I mean, I think it's just being creative in your own way. It's I would imagine it's very similar to you're coming up with ideas for your jokes, but then you have to form out a joke structure, right?
Right.
And so maybe let's go into that too, because, improv, you're doing that kind of on the fly with someone and they might say something and you're like, oh shit, that's not what I had pictured. But what, like for you, when you're writing these jokes or you're like, all right, the story of, how you fucked up a heroin bust, like, how do you even approach that? Like, do you have like a structure that you're kind of like, okay, this is the hook, this is the first act 2 or act 3. What do you do?
So that's something that I'm figuring out myself right now. My joke writing process has grown and changed. It's morphing just like as time goes. I recently just got introduced to concept mapping, which fucking blew my mind when it came to joke writing.
What is that?
My girlfriend, she's a comedian as well, a local comedian here in town, Caitlin Owens. She's also a teacher. And this was something that she learned through teaching was like, so there was a headline that I read recently, and it was actually the like one of the first times I was working on jokes since she introduced concept mapping to me. And the headline that I read was that there was a sports betting website that is, for the first time ever in the world, opened up bets on a certain event. They started taking bets on the Special Olympics.
Oh
is right. Interesting is right.
First off, I didn't realize they weren't.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you just assumed.
I guess I didn't realize that they weren't, but also like I never went looking for it. I sports gambled for a couple years. And then
wow,
so
you were
like,
just doing all the illegal stuff, huh?
It's legal. It's legal.
I'm just kidding.
It's legal now.
Kidding. I was
We're not
gambling
talk about
too.
when I did it.
I had a iPhone app where I had to like text a guy and he would like send me a login. Did you do that too?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I had that for a while, and I'm an outlaw. That's how I got my street cred.
So the concept mapping essentially is, so like I'll take a piece of paper. My 2 main things involved in this are sports betting and the Special Olympics. So I wrote those 2 down on a piece of paper, put a circle around each one. And then like I would look at sports betting, and then I would write down around that circle every single thing that I knew that is involved with sports betting.
Oh,
Any
I see where you're
term,
going.
anything like that. And you just draw a line to each of those. And then the same thing with the Special Olympics. You draw a line to each of those, and then you start finding the connections. And then you start looking through and seeing if there's anything that matches up through there, and then kind of what avenues to take across there. It's been a fun way to write jokes. I wouldn't say that it is my format for writing jokes, but it is something fun where like if I'm having trouble putting A and B together and I know that there's something there, it's a fun way to help get things moving.
Interesting. I love that concept. That's a very phenomenal
like
idea.
cloud mapping is a lot of
Mind mapping. That's what it reminds me of, that kind of stuff.
Circles,
Yeah.
connections. I do like Shane Gillis's take on the Special Olympics when
Oh my God.
Yeah.
said on that.
He's one of my favorite comics. And so like as I wrote that joke, his was constantly in the back of my mind.
Right.
Like I can't step on any of this. Like
right.
it's obviously the same topic, but I don't want to tread in any of those waters. And it was very kind of careful angle I've taken, where I make myself look not the best, but it's for fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would imagine too, that's a tough thing to do, is to be like, say something and you think it's original but you've heard it before, right? And you don't make that connection. I've done that before when it's like, oh, or someone's been like, Steven, that was a joke. We've heard that before. And it's like, shit, I thought I was the one that came. Yeah.
I just had that happen yesterday.
Oh, shit.
I've been working this joke for like 3 weeks. It's like a real story thing that I had where, and I can tell the joke because I can't actually tell the joke anymore, but I'll tell it here. It's something where like there's a specific person that I learned about in my life. There were two historical figures that I learned about in 8th grade. And because I learned about them at the same time, they are the same person in my mind. So in my mind, Anne Frank and Helen Keller are the same fucking person.
Oh my God.
Well, yeah, a lot of people think that.
I mean,
And
I get it.
It's so, yeah. And as I started telling that joke, I was like, I can't be the only one.
Yeah.
And so like, and there's a few tags to lead off of that. And like, I started telling it and I got so many people being like, oh my God, that's so funny. I thought the same thing. Like I've always thought that. I confused them all
They
the
were
time.
both in World War II.
Just getting great reactions. And I was like, fuck yeah, guys, I got something good on my hands here. And then yesterday, I got to hang out with one of my good comedian buddies, Ben Peterson, someone who's going to be on this upcoming Alaskan tour that we're going to talk about soon. But I tell this joke to him because he hasn't been around. He's been out commercial fishing for the summer, so I was catching him up on all the jokes that I wrote, and I was like, oh, this is one of my favorites. Let me tell you this Anne Frank Helen Keller bit, and he was like, damn, that's a good joke. Bert Kreischer did the same thing like 3 years ago on a special, and I was like, fuck. So. It's burned.
Yeah.
I can't, because literally his whole story is he went to the Anne Frank house and was like, why are you guys saying that? Or like, I don't remember exactly how his joke, but it was essentially the same idea where he thought he was at Helen Keller's
Keller.
house and he was at Anne Frank's house, or he's like, how did they keep her so quiet or whatever?
Yeah.
Which also was one of my fucking tags.
Yeah.
Damn.
It was one of those where I'm like, damn, did I actually come up with this, or was this something that was in the back of my head this whole time?
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Yeah, because I would imagine too. You're consuming a lot of comedic work.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, stand-up comedy.
Once I started comedy, my consumption of it has dropped drastically.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Before it was nonstop every day, as much as I can find. Every podcast was comedy. Everything that I would watch was comedy, whether it was a show or a special.
Yeah.
Everything. But I have found myself like not as, it's not even that I'm not as hungry for it, but also too, like, I constantly find myself, if I like watch a great special and then suddenly I'll find like the next time that I'm writing jokes, I'll realize that like things are being stylized to that last person that I really liked or something.
Yeah.
And, something that I always heard listening to other comedians say on podcasts, and something that I can now witness too at the open mics, watching some people like just getting started, some people that have been doing it for a long time, is when you do like first start, most people's routines, most people's sets, most people's styles are just their impersonation of their favorite comedian.
Right.
And it was something that I struggle with constantly, is like, I'll say something and then I always record my sets and listen to them back, because it's really hard to be there in the moment.
Sure.
And remember it correctly. But I'd record it and listen to it back and be like, well, that's exactly how Tom Segura delivers his punchlines. Right. Or like, oh man, this setup is like, maybe the words aren't exactly the same, but the way it was put out is exactly like the way Kyle Kinane does it, or Anthony Jeselnik. And like, those are like some of my favorite guys. And, I find myself where like right now I'm trying to approach a more calm demeanor on stage. For like the last year and a half, I was as high of energy as possible, like walk up screaming instantly when I get on stage, and just pacing back and forth. And then, a few comedians would be like, man, you're really good at the, of course, I'm forgetting it now too. It's like the Kings of Comedy, Bernie Mac, Chris Tucker style, like just pacing back and forth, just screaming and fucking delivering crazy energy with it too. But it was something that I'm trying to not come out the gates as hot, to have the power to bring the energy up when I want it, instead of coming out with high energy, because then you have to maintain that high energy or you lose them at some point.
You gotta go down.
Which has been some great advice that I received from a good friend of mine, a local comedian, Brian Otten, one of the best in town here to do it. You guys can see him at Coots all the time. If you go to any comedy shows there, he's definitely a mainstay for the headliners that come through there in the wintertime.
Yeah. I am curious, and we don't need to like brush up on him, but it's like I mean, I think with artistry or creativity or anything like that, you're always trying to find your voice, right? That's always something like, I mean, even as a filmmaker, I'm running into, and is like, well, what are you trying to say, right? What's your voice? What's your style? It's more style for filmmaking, but it's like basically the same thing. And so it's very difficult. And it just, I mean, you're doing it though. You're like getting up and doing again. But also something I want to talk about too is like, it seems like you're taking feedback really well. I know a lot of people who like will do something and then it's like, well, you could have done this better. And it's like, fuck you. You know what I mean? You could easily say that, but you're opening up yourself and being like, okay, you know what? That's not a bad idea. And so let me switch things around, because that's tough. That was like your whole thing, going in hot, baby. But now you're kind of coming in cold, you know, and then we go hot. But like, I get that. But at the same time, like, you know, how do you kind of just take yourself out of the situation and be like, oh, you know what? He actually wants me to succeed. Like, is that something that you've worked up to? Like, and just kind of like you've opened up a little bit more now that you're doing comedy more? Or is that something you've had kind of all your life?
Great question.
Thank you. I got it.
I don't even have to ask that one.
Yeah. No, it is something that I've had to work on. There are plenty of times, like, I'm not against notes. It means certain things coming from certain people. Like for the specific instance of my friend Brian approaching me and him, he moved up here from Colorado and joined our comedy scene right about the same time that I did. And me and him have done a lot of shows together. We really have a lot of fun and have been able to travel and experience some really cool towns and really cool shows through this comedy thing. He's somebody that I respect a lot in the scene. And so I know that when it comes from him, or, you know, comes from when things come from somebody that I respect, you know, that's always taken with a little more.
Yeah, when you trust the person.
Right.
Yeah.
But also, too, I'm always open to hear anybody's ideas or notes. I can't promise that I'm always going to apply them, but I am always curious to see what other people think or what their opinion is on something or what their angle is. It's one of my favorite things to do, like when I'm writing jokes or working on jokes before it gets to the point where I would consider them like completed and ready for shows. When I'm going through the process, I like to present them to the comedians that I trust and that I really appreciate, because they can always provide a different angle, a different way of looking at things. You know, I had coffee with my buddy yesterday, and we just shared jokes back and forth for a couple hours and just kind of worked on them. And we'd like tell each other a joke, and then we'd sit there for about 30 seconds and stare at each other and be like, well, what if you approached it like this instead? Or oh, have you thought about it from this angle?
That's phenomenal.
It's a lot of fun.
I love
It's
that.
really fun to collaborate with others and hear from them. And I mean, to be completely honest, the majority of the time you're like, that's really good, but that's not how I would do it.
Yeah.
But it's fun to hear that angle. But then there are some times where you're like, oh, fuck, you nailed it there. Like that I can't believe I never thought of it that way.
And then the guy's like, damn, that's mine. Actually, that's my idea. I had it, you son of a bitch.
Is there the vibe in the local scene of scarcity or competition? Because like you're saying, you're going to local comedian. Well, not always, but I mean like your buddies with a lot of the local comedians. Is there the feast or famine kind of mentality with a lot of them? Because when there's big shows, I mean, there can only be so many openers, and probably each one of you would like that spot. And so does that ever come into play with like your buddies? Do you guys have a talk? Be like, you know what, I'm gonna bomb tonight, so you get this opening, or you know, like I mean, like how does that play out with you guys?
Yeah, no. So like it's amazing and surprising how little of like a toxic competition the community is.
Yeah.
You hear about it all the time. You know, you constantly, like, I'll be meeting headliners that get flown up here from the different states, and I always like to ask them about what the local scene is like in their place, because, you know, I'm just curious about that kind of stuff. And you always hear all the times about how competitive it is, or cutthroat, or you know,
Right.
you only get your certain chances, or it's about who you know and the politics of it and everything. And yeah, sure, slight aspects of that play here, but I would really say, like, I've never heard anything like that where, like, someone's like, fuck that guy, I deserve that spot better. Like, joking around wise, yeah, sure. But, like, genuinely, it really is a thing where, like, everybody eats right now, and everybody's eating real good.
Nice.
I think maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are some people that feel a certain way about things, but I do feel like if you're coming to the mics, if you're doing your work to make yourself better, if you're proving it, then you get asked to do the spots. I do feel like the people that run a lot of the shows up here do recognize when someone's working hard and when someone's funny. And it is something where I think, if anything, when comics start seeing, like, there's certain comics will get certain runs, or sometimes you'll just be like, hey, I just happened to luck out into like 4 shows in a row.
Yeah.
And then if anything, what I've seen has just been inspiration for the others to be like, well, that means I have to be better, which has been really cool. It's been really fun to see, yeah, sure, there's some complaining. You'll hear some guy whining about, like, why did this guy get that show? I feel like I deserve it, or something like that. But also, I feel like at the same time, whenever that's brought up, it's like a general consensus. It's like, maybe you feel that way, but like as the community, no one is questioning why this is happening.
Gotcha. I love that. I feel like that's, I don't know, you're I think touching on Alaska as a whole too, because, like, there's a bunch of pockets, scenes, what have you, and I feel like everybody in those scenes, whether it's a music or comedy or film, or even podcasting, honestly, it's like we've been supported by a lot of podcasters who are in town, and it's like, we don't see it as like, oh, we're taking downloads or numbers away from you, but it's like, everybody's building each other up, and I love that. I think that's what's beautiful about Alaska. Speaking of Alaska, and you touched on it a little bit, you've got this big tour coming up. And so let's quickly brush on that. Kind of tell us where you're going, what you're doing, who's doing what, and blah, blah, blah. Just go through it and talk about that.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to have this opportunity. I was able to connect with a headlining comedian, Brooks Whelan. He's an LA-based guy. Great. Absolutely amazing comedian. He spent a lot of time lately touring the country with John Oliver and just on his own doing comedy shows around. And I was able to get in touch with him and start setting up some shows up here. Originally, it was one show at the Beartooth Theater here in Anchorage. And then once me and him got that set up with the event manager there, Brooks hit me up and said, hey, buddy, I'm coming to Alaska. I want to see as much of the place as possible. He was really inspired by this tour doc dropped by the White Stripes called Under the Great White Northern Lights, where Jack White had never been through Canada. And so he wanted to touch all 7 provinces and kind of documents that as he goes through and put that out as like a tour doc, concert doc kind of thing. Brooks was really inspired by that, wanted to go to as many Alaskan towns as possible. So I had never set up shows before. I've only done shows that other people have invited me on to or booked me for. But I'd, been keeping an eye out on it. A few of my friends were the ones throwing the shows, so I was able to work with them. Definitely there was Jake Armstrong is one of the local comedians. He's a part of a local comedy group called Rubber Ptarmigan. And he was able to kind of get me in line with a few different venues and kind of just give me some advice on how to negotiate shows or how to even set them up. And then from there, I just started cold calling bars, cold emailing them, really. Well, technically, I cold emailed them, waited 2 weeks, didn't get an email back, called them, been like, hey, check your inbox. I know you're in Homer and probably don't check your email very much, but then they did, and then they would contact me back. And it was a whole thing where eventually I got us set up where we got a fun little tour through Alaska. We're going to start off September 15th is the first show. It's going to start off in McCarthy.
Yeah. Interesting.
It's a wild intro to Alaska for the first time for someone.
I love that for someone who's never been to Alaska, they're going to McCarthy first. Have you ever been to McCarthy?
I haven't, but
I
know about it.
I love it, right? I love McCarthy. I've only been there once. I think it's a gorgeous glorious place, but it is out there.
Yeah.
It's like an 8-hour drive from here.
Mhm.
But man, how cool is it that his first time he's going to go to McCarthy first? And then it's kind of fun because like that's probably going to be one of the smallest ones, I would imagine, right? Yeah. And then of course you're going to end with the big one. So speaking of like tour doc, I think that would be a really good, like you got that upswing anyways.
Right.
So anyway, you should document it for sure.
Yeah.
But, so you go to McCarthy September 15th. That's how it kicks off. And then what's next? What other days?
McCarthy in September 15th.
You don't have to mention dates.
Yeah. Okay.
You can just say where you're going.
We're going to McCarthy. After McCarthy, we're going to Juneau. After Juneau, we go Sitka and then Cordova. We come back to the mainland and then we drive down to Soldotna. The following night's going to be in Talkeetna. And then we have a Fairbanks show.
Soldotna, Talkeetna, Fairbanks. Man, you guys will be all over the place.
It's a lot of driving. And so all of those shows right there are 8 days. That's an 8-day period where
you guys will be traveling.
We're in McCarthy.
So much.
We drive back to Anchorage, immediately fly out to Juneau. We do have 1 day to hang out in Juneau after the show. And then the following morning, we fly to Sitka. The following morning, we fly to Cordova. And then the following morning, we fly back to Anchorage, get picked up at the airport, drove in straight to Soldotna. The next morning, driving straight back to Talkeetna.
Wow.
And then to Fairbanks.
Wild.
But then we got a nice 5-6 days off. We have Sunday through Thursday off, which, oh man, we almost got a show booked for that time in between Fairbanks and Anchorage. They were willing to pay $4,000 to fly us out, plus the show fee and everything, to go out to fucking Dutch Harbor and do a show out there. The only reason we couldn't do it was because we were potentially going to get weathered out and couldn't make it back for the Beartooth show.
Oh yeah,
it was all lined up and everything, and there was even the show and then 3 days to get back to Anchorage, and it was still too risky.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, because they get the potential to get weathered out for a week straight's a real thing.
That's smart. I think, but also like I think a lot of people who come up to Alaska, they also they want to work and they want to share their craft with people, but they also want to experience Alaska. So those 5 days before, I can imagine it just even being in Anchorage,
get some fun.
Yeah, but there's 4-wheelers or glaciers or bonfires or whatever. I think that's gonna be so much fun, and you're also, there's someone that you can potentially bounce off ideas, because a lot of traveling, and it's what are we going to talk about? What do we have in common? Oh, comedy. So I think that's so cool about it too, and that you're going to be able to do that. So where can people find out more about this tour, and Brooks and Justin and everybody who else is going to be on the tour, and what dates and whatnot?
Thank you for asking. For this specific tour, all the tickets are available at brookswheelan.com.
Okay.
You're able to get all the tickets through there, view all the shows and everything. If you follow him on Instagram, you'll see him and myself on Instagram too, promoting things. He's at Brooks Wheelan, BROOKSWHEELAN. And I'm at Justin Sands Comedy on Instagram. Sands spelled like a beach, SANDS. More information on shows and things. I mainly promote through my Instagram as well.
Easy.
Yep. And then a fun place just to see where Alaskan comedy is happening. I mentioned them earlier, Rubber Ptarmigan. Rubber Ptarmigan has a Facebook and Instagram and a website where they're constantly putting up fun articles and things like that, kind of like Onion-esque, silly news articles. But also they have a calendar and a schedule showing all the local comedy shows here and around the area. So it's a fun place to follow and check in with if you ever want to see some comedy.
Cool. Well, man, Justin, I think you fixed us, dude. We totally you freaking fixed us, dude, on comedy. I think we have a little bit better grasp on what you do, and how it works, and it's how you structure everything. And it's a lot more than what you see on TV, or a lot more than what you see on stage. And I think that's fascinating. It's kind of, it's cool because it's a peek behind the curtain, right? And so thank you for giving that to us. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, we could almost maybe hook us up with the Dutch Harbor show.
Oh.
He could be Brooks, I could be Justin. We'll just go out there as you two. Oh. Have they seen you guys?
No.
Oh, perfect.
We're gonna make our own tour
Perfect.
documentary.
We're gonna go get weathered in,
Yeah.
and we're gonna do 7 nights straight.
You guys gonna become best friends with the Deadliest Catch guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
New material
Absolutely.
guaranteed every night.
Yeah.
That's my guarantee.
No, that is man, it does, like, we have had people on before that were like, all right, it would be fun. Like we had Egg Tit, who was our Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Tattoo.
Yeah, and Viola.
Oh yeah,
And,
yeah. Sorry, Viola. My bad.
Yeah, sorry, it was Viola, no, Viola. And anyway, so we were like, oh, let's go get tattoos. Or it's like, Golden Delicious. Oh, let's, maybe we do a drag show and see what it's like, I think it would be really fun to start doing all these things, but also maybe start writing actually comedy down, and maybe we all do like something together, and very small. I don't want it to be big.
Yeah.
But
I would love that.
I think that'd be really fun. It's like,
You're worried about it being too big? Like 10
I'm
people.
I'm thinking like 10 people, like a small gathering.
You bring
Maybe
all the comedians to roast us.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, you guys have had like enough guests now where you can put on like a solid variety show.
We've talked about that. Yeah.
I'm sure you. Yeah.
We definitely have interest in doing like meetups. Like we're going to do a meetup with the for the Anchorage haunted tour.
Oh,
we're gonna do like
my girlfriend have been talking about doing that. Do you guys? Yeah,
we're gonna do it tomorrow, but then we haven't posted about it. So we're gonna do it sometime in the next week or two.
Doing a fix yourself meetup.
Yeah,
fuck yeah.
He didn't respond to us, so we're just like, well, we're gonna converge on your location.
Yeah,
I want more info in this.
Yeah, we'll post about it. We'll post about it.
Everything.
But anyway, man. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for telling us a little
me.
bit about your world and giving us an insight in what you do. We are very excited for you, and we're excited to catch one of your shows. We're excited for the Beartooth show. I think that's I want to go to that one.
To see you guys there.
I'd love to see Brooks. I've actually, like we were talking before, I was like, I am familiar with Brooks before you actually booked it. So I'm excited to see you and Brooks on that stage, because I think it's a big and special stage. So thank you, man. I appreciate you for coming on.
Thank you, guys. So much fun.
Thanks for tuning in. Kyle and Steven will be back with a new episode next week. In the meantime, check out gofixyourselfpodcast.com. And remember to always go fix yourself.